I've always had something of a struggle with that because I've I had a lot of success on country radio years ago, but even then, depending on who you would speak with or who I was talking to, I'd be pegged either as a folk singer or a folk rocker who was sort of moonlighting in country, and then I'd talk to someone else and they'd say, "Well, you're a country singer. Why are they putting you in the folk section?" And it still goes on. So I'd like to borrow an idea from a friend of mine who's an artist, and she says, "You're a slash artist." And I go, "What does that mean?" She goes, country slash folk rock slash pop slash whatever. And, for the purposes of, I guess, marketing and, uh, you know, categories on iTunes or whatever it is, you can look a few different places and find me there. And I'm I'm just about the last person who wants to try to be definitive about categories because I like to listen to so many different things, and I imagine I think it's sort of a badge of honor to sort of float into a lot of different places. No, I don't think that's true. I mean, you can talk to Michael Stipe, and he's from down south, and he may not have much of an accent anymore, but that doesn't make him a country artist. Um, and for that matter, a lot of people from the South or rural areas and down there, they may have an accent, but that doesn't necessarily make them a country artist either. And I mean, it's an interesting topic. It's like when Bruce Springsteen, for example, will put out an acoustic record. That year, invariably, it'll be nominated in the folk category of the Grammys or something. But the next year, he'll put out a band record and it'll be in the rock section. So what does that tell you? It just says to me that things are interchangeable. I don't know. Maybe they feel that it's the sentiments are sappy or easy. It's like that it's not uh, deep or something like that. Some people just don't like the sound of a pedal steel guitar or fiddle, sort of traditional instruments of country music. Um, I didn't really know what country music was until I found myself in Nashville and signed to a label there. Um, but what I discovered at that time, and this was 1987, um, I found myself drawn to these artists that were writing songs that were just extraordinary. People like Roseanne Cash and Lyle Lovett, Steve Earle, Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, Rodney Crowell, Nancy Griffith, people that were writing these amazing story songs and literary songwriting that was just as moving to me as anything I'd ever heard in any genre of music. And I felt really drawn to that, but I didn't realize that at that time, sort of that's what country music was very much about. Um, but everything's cyclical and everything changes. And nowadays, I mean, I think contemporary country music, there's different, factions, whatever. But there's someone like an artist like Taylor Swift who's just as popular sort of in pop music as she is in country music. And some people will say or will argue, well, it's not country music she's doing. And other people will argue from the pop side, well, that's not pop music, she's a country artist. And again, we can have this conversation over and over again, but it really is just all in the ears of the listener and what they connect to and what they don't. Well, I think it always has had respect from certain quarters. I think this is a wonderful tribute to Hank Williams and his contributions to American culture and music. He's, a towering figure in terms of the history of country music and certainly the American songbook as well. Um, I think it's just something I just thought about from your last question, but I think sometimes country music is kind of looked down upon by certain, depending on sort of your political, um, you know, uh, persuasion. It, it it has been at times, co-opted by either, the right or whatever. That if you're a country, the idea being that if you're an aficionado of country music or a practitioner, whatever, if you're a country music fan, then you must have conservative politics or that sort of thing. And again, that's something that I would take exception to. I'm not a conservative, and yet well, again, not much anymore perhaps, but at the time when I was sort of within that world, I felt very comfortable with my politics in country music.